Thank you for tuning in today. This is a different kind of podcast this week. We've been coming together this way for almost a year now. This is my 44th episode, and we're in season 3. And if you're a returning listener of mine, you know that my mission each week is to bring you a weekly dose of health and wellness inspiration so that we can live our best lives, longer, stronger, healthier, and happier. Perhaps you're new and today's the first time you are listening to me. If that's the case, what I'm going to talk about today is different than my usual approach. You should know that. And I promise that next week I'll return to normal programming. It's different because this past week I lost a very sweet, beloved, and dear friend. So I'm coming to you today with a very heavy and broken heart. And while my heart is completely broken, in dying, my friend reminded me of what it means to truly live. And I want to share her wisdom with all of you. As always, I'm grateful that we are on this journey to wellness together, and I thank you in advance for listening. This is the Wishing You Well podcast, and I am your host, Maria Patrick. My friend's name is Laurie, and she passed away last week after battling breast cancer. I think I should start at the beginning about the story of our friendship by telling you something that I'm not sure I ever shared with you before. You probably already know I'm a health coach and a Qigong instructor, and those two separate careers, while they are distinct and different and they require different training and they carry separate titles, and in many cases I work with different sets of people, occasionally the two paths cross. And one way in which they do is that part of my business is that I work with people who have breast cancer for free, pro bono. I don't accept a single cent. And in addition to offering nutritional support and recommendations for healing and recovery, I'm trained in Qigong for breast health. And the movements that I know in which I teach my clients who are dealing with breast cancer are very helpful. They're helpful during recovery, they're helpful during healing, they're helpful for prevention. So several years ago, I was on a webinar with the Qigong master instructor with whom I trained, and a woman came on the screen during the Q&A portion of the class, and she shared her breast cancer diagnosis with everyone. She was asking that day for advice and support and help. And our master instructor answered her questions and gave her some suggestions. I did something that day that I've never done before. I reached out to a stranger and offered my services. It was a cold call. I said, "You don't know me, but I'm here to help you if you would like." That was the beginning of Laurie's healing journey, my honor and role to be part of that journey, and the beginning of our friendship. And I was so happy to be able to be united with her. It was one of those times where I was so very grateful to Zoom, because our friendship, our connection, her healing journey, it was all done virtually, because she was on the west coast of the United States and I'm on the east coast, 3,000 miles and a few time zones away and apart from each other. We became more than just teacher and student, more than just health coach and client. We became fast friends. We found out that we had so much more in common than just a concern about health and wellness and healing. We planned This Is Us watch parties. We shared book and music recommendations almost daily. Together, we followed the trials that were in the news. We compared notes on the testimonies, and we did our own trial analysis. We talked about our kids, her pets, our careers. We had Zoom tea parties and Qigong practice sessions. We talked about her daughter's upcoming wedding and my son's college graduation. We traded Pinterest boards, ideas, and inspiration. We compared our Trader Joe's shopping lists, and we compared tea recommendations. We put together a Spotify playlist and a books to read this year list. We shared concert recommendations. We checked in with each other regularly, consistently, and thoughtfully. 2 years ago, we celebrated together when Laurie received the great news that her cancer was gone. You couldn't wipe the smiles off of our faces. Sadly, just a few months ago, Laurie was once again battling cancer. And of course, I was right by her side as much as I could be, given how far that we live away from each other. And quite sadly, tragically, just a few weeks ago, Laurie called to tell me the devastating news that she was not doing well and that her doctors said that there was nothing more that they could do. I would love to tell you, I really, really wanted to be. I wanted to be able to tell you that I was strong for her that day. I tried so hard. Laurie was always so strong and brave. And I was so strong and brave and positive for her throughout the years that we were together. So I had every intention on that phone call of being a rock, being an anchor, being a steel rod for her to hold on to. But I just couldn't stop the tears which were flowing from my heart. I told her that day that I would never stop praying for a miracle and that we would be friends forever. But since I didn't feel that I expressed well enough that day how much she meant to me, I decided to write her a letter telling her everything that she meant to me and how important her friendship was. It was actually my dear friend Lisa who suggested that I write Laurie the letter. I wrote it immediately through tears, sobs, and I mailed it to the West Coast the next morning. I texted a copy of the letter to Laurie's daughter in case it didn't reach her in time. Today, a little bit later, I'm going to share a part of that letter with you so that you too can hear the way that Laurie taught me to live as she was dying. Laurie told me on the phone that day that she was at peace, that she and her husband were grateful for the 2 additional and incredibly beautiful years that they had together. She told me that she was honored that her death was bringing together her family from all around the country and that her mom, who's in her late 80s, would finally be able to meet the great-grandchildren that she had not yet met because of the distance that separated them. Laurie told me that day that hospice had come in earlier that day and that the nurse had asked her who were her top 5, not family, but friends. And her nurse was shocked that I was in the top 5 because, again, as I said to you earlier, we had this very strong connection and beautiful friendship, but we never actually met in person. Laurie told me, and what an honor to hear this, that I was in her top 5. And I told her that day that she was in my top 5. Laurie often sent me photos of herself by text or email of her outside with her sunglasses on, with her head tipped back and looking at the sun. The reason that this was quite remarkable and notable is because if you know anything about Seattle, Washington, where she lived, it's known for being so often so cloudy there. Laurie regularly reminded me how important it is to look up, to turn towards the light, to bask in the sunshine. Laurie was very committed to her adult children and to their children. She so often, during her cancer battle, she talked to me about them, not about her or her health or her diagnosis. It was not a pity party. It was about strength and bravery and sharing love and light and inspiration. Laurie sent me beautiful gifts, which I will cherish forever. one of which I will mention at the end of this broadcast. She regularly reached out to people via calls, texts, email, and snail mail. I was fortunate, as I said earlier, to be one of them. Laurie was still asking all about me and how I was doing, even during our last phone call. Laurie taught me how to live better, happier, and with more meaning. There is a beautiful quote that I think of often. The bitterest tears shed over graves are for words left unsaid and deeds left undone. Harriet Beecher Stowe. Laurie left nothing unsaid and no deeds left undone. That quote is one of the reasons I wrote the letter to Laurie. So what I wasn't able to say clearly enough on the phone to her that day, some of what I put in the long letter that I wrote to her, that I promised to live by her example. And this is what I wrote. I promised to be there for my adult children with my whole heart, just like you do. I promise to celebrate every day as the gift that it is, just like you do. I promise to go outside with my sunglasses on and look at the sun, just like you do. I promise to travel near and far to catch a concert, just like you do. I promise to use my talents and treasures to help others, just like you do. I promise that I'll put an extension on my house to make room for family celebrations, just like you did. I promise to send my friends "I'm thinking about you" texts, just like you do. I promise to share my book and music recommendations with anyone who's interested, just like you do. I promise to make a books to read list for next year, just like you do. I promise to make virtual tea and coffee dates with people, just like you do. I promise to sing aloud to Broadway show tunes, like you do. And to live a life of purpose and passion and love, just like you do. My friend Laurie was a true treasure. I told her so on the phone and in that letter. And while we didn't know each other very long, we made up for it in quality what we didn't have in quantity. We bridged the gap of time and geography. We left no words unsaid. Laurie was an incredibly beautiful and generous person, and she gave me some very meaningful and special, significant, beautiful gifts in the several years that we were friends. She gave me a beautiful gold dragon pin in honor of this year being the year of the dragon. She gave me a gorgeous kimono that has a pattern of soaring cranes all over it because I taught her soaring crane Qigong. I wear that kimono now for no reason at all, which is really every reason at all, just like Laurie, to celebrate every day, to remind ourselves of the beauty in everyday life. One of the gifts that Laurie gave me was an ornament of some female elephants. And I didn't pack it away with my holiday ornaments. I keep it out all year round because the ornament tells the story known as the Elephant Sisterhood, which I wasn't familiar with until Laurie introduced it to me. The Elephant Sisterhood story first entered public consciousness about 20 years ago when it was featured in the New Yorker magazine. It was an article called "The Elephant Queen," and it explored the life of the matriarch of the herd. Torn Ear was the name of the elephant. And her story about how she led her herd through rough times. And it talked about something that I never knew before. And I come from the town of Somers, New York, which is known as the birthplace of the American elephant. That's a story for another day. But I didn't know the story about how female elephants protect each other and each other's family and offspring and come to each other's aid during difficult situations. She talked about, Laurie did, that when she presented me with that ornament, that we would be forever bonded, that we had created our own elephant sisterhood, that we had united together in love and humanity and support and this sisterhood, about friendship and solidarity and how we can empower and support each other and overcome obstacles together. The elephant sisterhood is about elephants who form an unbreakable bond around the mother elephant who's threatened. And that when that mother elephant runs into trouble, the other elephants step in to form a tight ring, a tight circle around them, and they travel together, henceforth, as a herd, side by side. What a beautiful lesson for life. Among the many things which Laurie and I shared was that we both loved the poet Mary Oliver, particularly the poem The Summer Day. How prophetic is it that Laurie passed on a summer day? Mary Oliver's words are so beautiful and quite meaningful, particularly to me today. Here they are. Who made the world? Who made the swan and the black bear? Who made the grasshopper? I don't know exactly what a prayer is. I do know how to pay attention, how to fall down into the grass, how to kneel in the grass, how to be idle and blessed, how to stroll through the fields, which is what I have been doing all day. Tell me, what else should I have done? Doesn't everything die at last and too soon? Tell me, what is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? My dear podcast listeners, life is short. It is so very precious. If you are not doing what you love or surrounded by people who love and support you, now is the time to make changes. Please fix it. Do not wait. If there's someone you need to speak to, do it now. If there's something or somewhere, something you want to do, somewhere you want to go, do it now. If there's changes that you can make so that you can live a more meaningful, passionate, true life, do it now. We never know how much time we have, and you don't want to have any regrets. My friend Laurie made a difference in my life and that of so many others. I made her a promise that her spirit will live on. I promised her that we will be friends forever, and that I know that I will see her again someday. And we'll have a lot to catch up on. What is it you plan to do with your one wild and precious life? Until next time, I am wishing you well.